Okay, here we are starting chapter 6. Make sure that you start these notes after you've done that investigation that I have out, because otherwise this stuff might be a little confusing. The first thing is the sum of the interior angles. They are always going to equal n minus 2 times 180. And with that investigation, if you remember, we found how many triangles the shape has. Sorry, this is not with a straight line tool. So this shape has 5 sides. There's a pattern here that then has 3 triangles. So what this says is we can take the number of sides that the shape has and subtract 2, because this tells me the number of triangles, and then I can just multiply that by 180. So you don't necessarily need to draw the shape out. If it were to have like 20 sides, you would just do 20 minus 2, 18 triangles times 180, and you could find this for any shape. So for example here for this pentagon has 5 sides, so 5 minus 2, and then multiply that by 180. This pentagon would have 540 degrees for all 5 of these interior angles added together. And it doesn't have to be a regular shape either. These could all be different. Kind of running out of space for those. But they could all be different. They would just all add up to 180 no matter what that pentagon looked like. So if I wanted to find the sum of the interior angles in an octagon, you can't see my whole chart, but I do have it on there for you just as reference. That is something that I expect you to know. But an octagon has 8 sides, so I could take the number of sides minus 2 and then multiply that by 180. So if you just grab your calculator quick, you can either type it in exactly like this, and if you're going to type it in exactly like this, just put parentheses around it, and you can figure that out. Otherwise, you can just do the subtraction in your head. Take 6 times 180. What do you get for the sum of the angles in an octagon? Okay, so 1,080, and that's degrees. So for this next part, it says not to find the sum, but it says to find each interior angle in a regular decagon. Before you do that, though, you do need to find the sum of the angles. So the sum of all the angles in a decagon with 10 sides, I would take 10 minus 2 and multiply it by 180. So if you grab your calculator again and you take 10 minus 2, you should get 8. And when you multiply that by 180, what do you get? 1,000 what?
1,440.
Thank you. 1,440 degrees. So this is the sum of all of the angles. For this one here, though, it's just asking for like each one if it's a regular decagon. So I can take that sum total and just divide by how many angles there are. I would be dividing by 10 in this case. So each angle would be 144 degrees if it's a regular decagon. And if you like formulas, what you can do for this is you can take the total sum, which is n minus 2 times 180, and you can just divide by n, the number of sides, and that would be what your answer is for that. Okay, down here for this one it says to find each angle measure. So you can tell, hopefully you can tell, that these are not all congruent angles. So it's not like I can just find one of them and they're all going to be the same. But I do know how many degrees all 5 of these are going to have to add up to. So we've done this a couple times before in that example, but just in case you didn't know, you could always take the number of sides minus 2 times 180. So in this case, 5 minus 2 times 180. So the sum of all of these angles is 540 degrees. So that's what you're going to do to solve for x. You're going to add all 5 of those angles up and just set it equal to 540 degrees. And if you want to, you could always like write it all out. I probably wouldn't. I would probably just like add the like terms in my head as I go through this. So the like terms, when you add them together, you have 2x and 2x and 3x and 3x. So that's going to be 10x. And then adding all of those constant numbers. So 170 degrees equals 540. And then this is something that you can solve. So when you solve that for x, what do you get? 37. X equals 37. The question's not asking me, though, to solve for x. The question says find each angle measure. So I would just take that 37 and plug it in for each angle. So when I plug in 37 for x here, so 2 times 37 is 74 degrees. Angle H is 74. I already know angle J. K is also 74 degrees. And then these two are the same, so you really just have to plug it into one of those spots. 3 times 37 and then plus 14 is, you should get 125. And you should get 125 then for that one also. Okay, so this next example, this is going to be something that you'll probably want to reference. So maybe put like a big star next to it or something. This tends to be the thing that's the most difficult for students until you get the hang of it. It says here that the measure of one interior angle, or an interior angle of a regular polygon, is 144 degrees. We want to find the number of sides that it has. So if you remember the formula we wrote down earlier, to find one angle, you can find the total number of degrees and then divide by the number of angles or the number of sides. That's going to equal the one interior angle if it's a regular polygon. So here what we have is we have the answer, and the answer to this question is 144, and we want to find the number of sides. And I really don't want you guys just double checking or guessing and checking and plugging things in. I'd rather you actually know how to solve this. So if it were going to be like 40 sides, you wouldn't be like guessing and checking all day. So we can go through and we can use algebra to solve this for n. And once you get past the first step and you can recognize this, the rest of it's pretty easy. What is it going to take to divide by n? Get rid of dividing by n. You got to multiply by n. So when you multiply each side by n, I have n minus 2 times 180 equals 144 times n. Then what I have to do is I have to distribute. So 180n minus 360 equals 144n. And I can go through and just get my like terms together. So subtract 180n from each side. So negative 360 equals, let's see, that's going to be negative, what will that be? Negative 36n. And then I can divide each side by negative 36. So n, the number of sides, equals 10. So find the number of sides in this polygon. Well, this would be a decagon. It would have 10 sides. And this just takes maybe a couple times of practice, just making sure you have those algebra steps down. And usually once you get that first step down, you're kind of good for the rest of it. Okay, so you'll like this one if you can remember it. It's really easy. We talked in the investigation about how as you increase the number of sides, that interior angle gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but that would make the exterior angle have to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So when you add the exterior angles together for any convex polygon, it doesn't matter if it's regular, doesn't matter the number of sides, the sum of them is always 360 degrees, no matter how many sides it has. So it could have 20 sides, all of the exterior angles are going to add up to 360. Could have 100 sides, and all of the exterior angles are going to add up to be 360. Okay, because they're just going to have to keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller each time. So when the directions say find the sum of the exterior angles in anything, this could say any shape, you're just going to say 360 degrees, and you're done. Short and sweet. You just have to remember it, and that's kind of the trick, remembering it. Okay, the directions for this one say find each exterior angle in a regular decagon. You do have to pay a little more attention to this then, because now we're not just finding the total sum of all of them, we're finding each one. So the sum of all of them is going to be 360 degrees. But then what would I have to do to find each one? I need to divide that by the number of sides. So if you want a formula, you could just do 360 divided by the number of sides. That's going to equal your one exterior angle. And this is only for regular shapes where all of the exterior angles are going to be the same. So in this case here, I would have 360 divided by, 10 sides? So that exterior angle equals 36 degrees. Okay, or in this picture here, they're marked all of those exterior angles, and you have 4 of them. Well, the sum of all of these is going to equal 360. So to solve for x, I would just add all those up and set it equal to 360. So when I add all those up, I get 17x plus 139 equals 360. So I can subtract that 139 over and then divide by 17. When you do that, you should get x to equal 13. And there we go. The hardest part about this section is just really reading the directions carefully and making sure when it says sum, you're giving the answer for sum. When it says like find one angle, you're finding that one angle, etc.